the Creative Chats podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artist makers and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. I'd love to invite you to stop by dailycreativehabit.com. I have created all sorts of resources for you because I truly believe that when you create, we all win. So I want to see as many of you stepping into your creativity fully, closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I want to help you do that. So I've created resources like the Daily Creative Habit Journal. I've written a book, Make Fun a Habit. I have all sorts of free resources like this podcast and a Facebook group called Daily Creative Habit. Also, the paid membership for Daily Creative Habit, where we get together with like-minded creators, all pushing in the same direction, encouraging each other, and saying we're going to show up every single day to create something to get our work out there into the world. So if you would like to be a part of any of those things, again, stop by dailycreativehabit.com or simply visit my website, which is mikebrennan.me. Hey friends, I'm fresh back from my trip from Nashville, Tennessee, where I was speaking and sketching at The Thing. Love that event. It happens twice a year right now. There's another Thing event coming up in Orlando, Florida, coming this November, 2024. So putting that on your radar. But I spent some extra time after the event in Nashville, and I always love hanging out with my community that's there and getting to experience some other things that I wouldn't normally. And so one of the things that I did was I ended up going to a concert, and actually two concerts, and I want to talk a little bit about my experience with these concerts and some thoughts around creativity that emerged as a theme, just kind of all on its own. And so as I'm thinking about these things, I wanted to share them with you and perhaps challenge the way that you think about some of the things that you've created in the past and maybe how you can breathe some new and different life into those things. So the first thing that I did was I went to this concert, and a friend of mine, Cabrina, who's been on this podcast before, she said she had free tickets to this Symphony Under the Stars, this outdoor venue called Ascend Amphitheater, which is a great location. And I thought to myself, well, that's cool. I'm down for hearing a symphony. And somewhere along the way, something got lost in translation there. And when we ended up going, I didn't realize until right before that this wasn't just a symphony, but it was actually Cypress Hill with the Nashville Symphony. And so if you're not familiar with Cypress Hill, do a little Google search. You may be familiar with some of their music. They've been around for 30 plus years or whatever it's been. More kind of hip hop music with, rap and kind of just a very kind of unique sound. And so they blended this with the symphony. And it was funny because as I'm there during this concert, they actually mentioned that the idea for this came about because of The Simpsons. That apparently in one of the episodes of The Simpsons, they must have had Cypress Hill with an orchestra. And someone was like, this is a great idea. We need to do this. And so there we were on this particular night under the stars listening to Cypress Hill with the Nashville Symphony. And it was really interesting because, you could tell that they were getting some new life breathed into songs that they had performed again and again and again. And, the really interesting thing was that it energized them. It gave them just a different presence. And so they were enjoying themselves with some songs that they have done probably thousands of times. And this freshness was there because of this new interpretation. And I thought it was really interesting how you can take something that's old, take something that you've done, that you've created, and introduce a new element into the mix. And all of a sudden, you've got something that is familiar but still new and fresh. And not only is it something that can be an inspiration for those who are listening, but also those who are creating. And so that was the first thing that happened. And this night, it was fun just to see the conductor and the symphony. I mean, they did a phenomenal job. At one point, I was laughing because they had the screen and they had the conductor there, and he's waving his baton there, conducting, and because the spotlight was on him, there were a lot of moths that were attracted, and so it kind of looked like he was chasing away the moths with the conductor sticks. I don't really know what you'd call them, but it was a little comical and reminiscent of Bugs Bunny. Anyway, interesting night. Not necessarily something that I would have naturally or normally gone to, but I was glad I had the experience, and it certainly started to spark this idea of how can you take something that is old and reintroduce with something new, have a fresh take on something. And so the second experience that I had was another concert, and this was actually something I found out about last minute from a buddy of mine. And there's a band called Stryper that is from the 80s. And I listened to them a lot in the 80s. And again, if you're not familiar with this band, just Google them quickly and you'll find some information. Yes, they were part of the hair bands and the bands that had the very high hair, a lot of makeup, a lot of spandex. Yellow and black was their kind of brand colors, if you were. Anyway, I've seen them many, many times over the years, and places where it was like, I think the first time I saw them was 1984, to date myself, at Montclair, New Jersey High School. This is obviously before they made it much bigger. Eventually, they had a hit on MTV when MTV used to play music and music videos. And they saw a significant increase in popularity from that point on. And I actually saw them at Radio City Music Hall at one point as well. And so now I was in this place called The Factory in Nashville, actually in Franklin, Tennessee. And this tour was actually called To Hell with the Amps instead of To Hell with the Devil, which is one of their popular albums. And so the idea behind this was, what would it be like for this hard rock band, this metal band, to perform these songs in an acoustic manner? Now, it wasn't completely acoustic, even to their acknowledgement. They did have some amps on the stage, but things were more of an unplugged type of feel. And so there were no blaring Marshall stacks and guitars that were distorted. It was more of a like I said, unplugged type of scenario. And so they went through their catalog of music and decided which songs were they going to reinterpret with this acoustic unplugged style. And it was interesting because even they acknowledged that some of these songs were harder to translate than other ones. And overall, it was an enjoyable evening. We had a lot of fun, and hearing these songs presented in a different way, and yet, again, having that familiarity, but this fresh take on things, it was a fun experience. And so I was really glad that I was able to go that night, even though it was kind of a last minute thing. And so getting back to this whole idea of like, how can you take something that you've created and introduce a new element into it? Now, I don't know what it is that you might be creating or what that you have created in the past that you could maybe take and introduce something new to. Perhaps there is something that is a more ready application where you've done something musical and you can do this in a different style or with different arrangement or different instrumentation. Perhaps this is something that you want to think about in terms of visual art, if that is what your creativity is centered around. How can you take something that you've done in the past and do a different take on it? Perhaps it's using different colors. Perhaps it's using a different style. Maybe you have grown as a creative person and you would like to revisit something that was an important subject matter, an important series or body of work that you've created, and you want to just revitalize it and bring it back out and do something different with it. And you never know, you might be able to find a new audience with something that is older that you've created just by introducing this new element. And you might actually be able to kind of restoke the fires of interest with people who were originally fans of this work. So just want to plant those seeds for you today in this shorter episode, to go and think about what you've created. What is in your catalog of work, your body of work that you can pull out and introduce something new and fresh, reinterpret, remix it, figure out how you can actually have fun doing that, and then potentially surprise people, bring it out to people and see what they say. See if maybe this is even a new direction for you in something. Maybe this sparks some ideas or gives you that fresh inspiration that you need to tackle something new or to incorporate something into your style, your methodology, your techniques that you wouldn't normally do. And often that's the case, is that we need some kind of agent of change to introduce into our work, to keep it fresh, to keep it interesting, and to keep stoking our curiosity. Because really, at the end of the day, that is the thing that drives us. We're curious as to what happens if I do this? What happens if I choose that? And how will this affect me? How will this affect the approach to my work? How will this affect the work itself? And lastly, how will it affect the people who interact with my work? All these things are great questions to pursue and to try things. We won't know unless we take a stab at it and see what happens. We get some data and some research around some things to see, was this something that was, quote, successful? Is this something that I want to do again? Was this something enjoyable for me in the process? And was it well received? You are the one who gets to define what, quote, success looks like in those categories. But sometimes we need something to push us a little bit. We need something to help us break out of the routines and the monotony, honestly, sometimes we can find ourselves in the creative process. We often need to explore something so that we can keep growing as a creative person, that our work and our skill set and our experience can grow along with that. And we can show up a little bit different in the world. We can show up with this new idea, this new skill set, and continue to bring it before people and see how it affects others as well as ourselves. So that's my challenge to you right now, is to go through your body of work, something in the past, take it out, think about how can you introduce an agent of change? How can you revitalize something that's old and bringing a fresh take on something? Listen to remixes of music for some inspiration, because those are the obvious areas where we're listening to a song, we know it as one thing, and we see it show up as something else. We're listening to this new take, this new arrangement. And so maybe even as you're creating what you're creating, reintroducing that change agent, maybe you're having some of that on in the background as fuel, as inspiration. That is, of course, unless you're doing music yourself, which that could get a little complicated. But I trust that you will know what that right next step is and what that looks like. And again, really, it's just follow your curiosity, see what happens. And I would love to know what it is that you decide to do. And perhaps even if you're willing to share it online someplace, tag me. On Instagram, I'm at Mike Bone. And that's probably the easiest place to tag me and find me. But certainly you could drop by my website, mikebrennan.me, and leave me a message through the contact form there as well. And just let me know, what did you decide to do? How did it affect what you do? And did you get any insights? Did you get any fresh inspiration? Was there maybe the fan base or the followers that you have or the customers you have, whatever category that is, have they received something differently? And is there interest maybe perhaps to do more of that kind of thing? These are all things I would just love to know, because this is when it shows up in the real world. This is when it really matters. And so just wanted to share that real quick with you. For me, coming off of these 2 weeks of being away, we'll return next week with a couple of just awesome episodes in the hopper here. And I can't wait for you to hear the conversations that I have coming. I think you're going to continue to be inspired, continue to be challenged, and just remember, at the end of the day, I'm always rooting for you, even if we've never met, even if this has been our only form of connection, or maybe this is the first time you're listening to Creative Chats podcast. I want you to know that I'm rooting for you because I believe in creativity. I believe in the power of creativity and how it can change us and change our world. And it's just my privilege to be able to come alongside people and encourage them and say, let's keep going. Let's keep leaning into this and creating more and more things. Because when you create, we all win. I truly believe that. So I'm going to leave you, as I always do on these solo episodes, with this charge. Go create something. Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.